Today, we're setting sail for a case that can be called Survivor, Victorian edition. 4 sailors found themselves stranded at sea with nothing but a boat and a questionable menu choice. When hunger levels reached angry boss fight, sailors made a bold choice. And Victorian England said, "That's messed up even for us." We're talking about the Queen versus Dudley and Stephens. Picture this, 1884. A majestic yacht, the Mignonette, sounds fancy, right? Is cruising the high seas. On board, we have Captain Tom Dudley, mate Edwin Stephens, a seaman named Brooks. We also have the unlucky in life and death 17-year-old cabin boy, Richard Parker. Spoiler alert, poor Richard becomes the poster child for bad luck on the high seas. Then bam, a storm fiercer than a barrister on caffeine hits. The Mignonette goes down faster than a lawyer's reputation after a bad cross-examination. Our 4 brave, and now very wet, souls find themselves adrift in a tiny lifeboat, with rations scarcer than common sense in a parliamentary debate. They drift, and drift, and drift, for 20 agonizing days. Imagine the, "Are we there yet?" conversations. Richard Parker, bless his cotton socks, decides to drink seawater. Pro tip, don't do that. It ends poorly. Very, very poorly. Now, our Captain Dudley, ever the leader, looks at young, sickly Richard, then at his equally starving crew, then back at Richard. He's thinking, one scrawny kid. 3 grown men on the brink. A tough decision needs to be made. And folks, that decision was less, who gets the last biscuit, and more, who is the last biscuit. Dudley and Stephens, without drawing straws, because apparently, good sportsmanship goes out the porthole when starvation kicks in, decide Richard Parker's number is up. Captain Dudley performs the, what you may call, necessary procedure. For 4 days, they survive on, well, let's just say, protein sources, that weren't listed on the ship's manifest. Eventually, they're rescued. Hooray! But the triumphant return to England is quickly interrupted by a rather stern-looking policeman holding a warrant for murder. Plot twist. The defense argued, necessity. Your Honor, they pleaded, my clients were starving. They were literally facing death. It was 1 life to save 3. It's the ultimate Sophie's choice on the high seas. Alright, the jury has punted the ball. They've given the court a special verdict that basically says, yeah, they killed the boy, and yeah, they probably would have died otherwise. But is that legal? You tell us, smart guys in the robes. The court said, we searched the books. We checked the scrolls. We scoured every dusty tome of British law for a justification for murder under duress, and guess what? It doesn't exist. Your defense is based on the idea that fear of death is an absolute excuse. But if the law excuses every man who kills to save himself, then what happens to the poor bloke who gets robbed? He could claim necessity. What happens to the poor farmer who kills his neighbor for the last can of beans? It turns society into a barbaric, every man for himself free for all. And frankly, that sounds more like an American reality TV show than a proper English court. Here's where Lord Coleridge got philosophical. He didn't just reject the defense, he countered it with a moral punch. You speak of preserving your miserable lives. But what about the higher duty? What about the duty of sacrifice? We praise the soldier who throws himself on a grenade. We lionize the captain who goes down with his ship. Are they excused from duty because of necessity? Now, the famous bit about drawing lots. The defense tried to argue, well, if they'd drawn lots, it would be fair. The court swatted that down like a seagull stealing a chip. Drawing lots. A civilized lottery for murder. Even if you had drawn lots, it still boils down to 2 things. You unlawfully agreed to murder a man, and you executed the plan. The process doesn't sanitize the crime. Furthermore, we must ask the fundamental question that would sink your little lifeboat of excuses: who is to be the judge of this sort of necessity? If we say, yes, you were hungry enough, then where does it end? Is a week enough? 2 weeks? Who gets to decide when your hunger is more important than his life? We cannot place the sanctity of life on such a slippery, stomach-churning slope. The only line the law can maintain is that no necessity justifies murder. End of discussion. So, the court was crystal clear. Legally, they were guilty of murder, no necessity defense allowed. They got the mandatory death sentence. But wait, there's a twist even bigger than the Mignonette's mast. Public sympathy was through the roof. I mean, who hasn't considered desperate measures after a particularly long Monday? So, Queen Victoria herself, probably after a good cuppa and a stern talking to from her advisers, stepped in with the royal prerogative of mercy. Their sentences were commuted from death to 6 months imprisonment. 6 months for cannibalizing a cabin boy. I bet Richard Parker's ghost was just like, seriously. It's like getting a parking ticket for Grand Theft Auto. So, what's the takeaway from this maritime mayhem? The Queen versus Dudley and Stephens solidified the principle that the law values every human life, and you can't justify murder, no matter how dire the circumstances. It's a cornerstone of criminal law that keeps us from devolving into a survival of the hungriest, free for all. It also serves as a stark reminder. If you're ever shipwrecked, maybe pack extra snacks. And definitely don't drink the seawater. Or, bring someone who has a bigger appetite than you.